ServiceMonster. Hello, Facebook people. I assume we're live now.
Hello.
Yep, there we are. And I'm going to share this to the SMUG group. I share there. I share to a group. ServiceMonster user group. Boom, boom, boom. And we should be live on all channels. Very good. Hey, Adam.
Hello.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. How you doing?
I'm doing well. We've got some stuff going on, but such is life. But what are we going to be talking about today?
We've got kind of a full show, right? We've got big 667 release, bunch of things went out. I'm going to go through kind of like the heavier items in that list and kind of show you guys what that looks like, what all that entails. We'll talk a little bit about the 6612 release, which will be later this month. We'll talk about Responsibid, kind of. We've got some exciting news there. Kind of, you and I are going to be doing something with Kurt from Responsibid's team.
Yeah, I can't wait.
We've got Elena going through some QuickBooks stuff since it is tax season. Hopefully, you guys have not waited to the last minute. But there's that.
I'm giggling from personal experience and knowing that most business owners, we are like, put it in front of us and we will annihilate it, seek and destroy. But if it's in our peripheral vision and low priority, it's never going to get done. And taxes, man, that never make the priority list. That's why we pay other people to do it. And even then, it's a pain in the ass to get everything together and have that all done. So I giggle, yes, because I know that everyone is pretty much putting it off to the last minute.
Right. I mean, it's just
maybe
like
not Alan, maybe not him.
I was joking. I forget which team I was in the meeting with, but I was joking. It's kind of like when you get your syllabus when you're going to college. And it's like, yeah, you've got 3 big term papers due, and this is your midterm. And pretty much 99% of the class is like, all right, I'll forget about that until the day before.
Yeah.
So, anyways, kind of human nature. But yeah, we've got that. We've got a bunch of SMUG posts, including kind of we'll do a little bit of a deeper dive into Zapier, because there were a lot of posts about Zapier. So
there really were, and you guys had an update for that.
Yeah, going to kind of do that. So that's kind of the show. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. There'll be some screen sharing. You'll hear some amazing humor from your hosts here, because you guys know that's what you're here for. Yeah, I kind of get started here. 6611.
Let's go. Fire it off. Yeah.
All right. So the release was this last Tuesday. Sorry, fighting a sneeze here. And there were a bunch of new things. I'm just going to kind of go through the list. If the sneeze will make its way out. Oh my goodness. Okay. So I'm just going to share my screen here, and we'll just kind of walk through pretty much, the entire process, right? So I'll share that here. Joe, just give me a thumbs up if that's visible. Looks like it is.
Yeah, I can see it.
All right.
Yep. Looks good.
So the first thing is in the 6610 release, we did a big update to the order approval. Gave it a bunch of settings and things you guys can configure just to make the form itself a little bit prettier, just to give you guys some more options on some things. We did the same thing over here with our online payment form, or the invoice page. So if you come over this and you go to the configuration, you'll notice that this is vastly different than what it used to be. So only thing we used to have here was just a notification. That was literally it. So we've added everything up top here. And I'll just kind of explain what these are, right? We made sure you guys had a way to actually expire out the links. We had a default, but we wanted to give you guys some more control over that. You're able to now show some terms and disclaimers. You should likely have some specific terms and disclaimers for your online forms versus maybe your larger disclaimers or different disclaimers for your printed form, just because there's more room. We have the ability to show or hide the line item quantity and price. So do you just want to show like the total price of all of the carpet cleaning, for example, or do you want the breakdown of, there were 8 rooms and each room was, $45 or whatever it might be. You can now show the order note on this, which is a big one that was requested. There's a toggle for your company name. For example, like our logo is our name, right? With branded colors. You wouldn't necessarily need to have ServiceMonster, then in plain text after that, show ServiceMonster, right? So a lot of you guys have similar, so now you can actually toggle that off. And a big one that was a request, if you guys don't want to show the option to tip, if you don't want that to be an option for your clients, you can toggle that off. And the best thing is that you can kind of play around with this. You can do a preview of what the form looks like. We'll open that up and you can see in this situation, I have the tip line. I've got the order notes and where those will display. I've got my disclaimer, and I have both a disclaimer 1 and disclaimer 2, so you guys can see how that kind of outlines. I've got the logo up here. We've got the company name, since my logo is just the icon here. I've got the quantity and price turned off, so I just have the full amount. So you guys can play around with that.
Just wait, go back to that real quick.
Oh, yeah.
Because I just wanted to point something out. It's not always obvious. I know people get tripped up. The ServiceMonster, you might want to have used a different name. This is your company name and your company logo, right?
Correct.
So
yes.
just because it says ServiceMonster, and it should, we could have put it in Acme Cleaning Company, right? In the little Roadrunner dude, but just to show you that's yours.
Company info.
We don't brand your stuff at all.
That's a very good call, Joe. Yeah, that's pulled from your company info. So if you have more questions about how this gets used, there's a direct link to our help article right here. You can always disable it if you're ready, if you need to. So bunch of options there. The next thing is we added an improvement to our batch update tool for products and services. And I wanted to go over this because maybe more than a few of you might not even know that this exists at all. So when you're in your product or service list or your price list, however you want to kind of define it, and you have your list here, you can select a bunch of items at once. You can also just select the whole page up top here if you need to. And the nice thing is if you've got a large group, you can actually see the countdown here and go to the next page and kind of continue on. If you want to go that way, you can just do page by page, totally up to you. But what's cool is after you selected a bunch and you hit this update button up top here, it opens up our batch update tool. And so this is where you can basically do a batch update for whatever field you want. Do you want to deactivate them? Do you want to change the default quality, change the default price, which I'll go into here in just a second, change the group or subgroup that they're tied to, change the unit that they're tied to, market them as favorites, taxable or not, commissionable or not, upsell or not, locked. So you can basically toggle all these things on. Price is where we basically made a change here. So if you want to update the price, we used to just let you input a new price. If you wanted to say, hey, all 6 or all 7 of these items are going to be $100, you could do that. You can also now do a selection here to increase them by a percentage or decrease if you're ever in that situation. But if you want to increase all of these by 10%, you can also just use the arrows, right? If you want to, this is only whole numbers. And then it defaults to rounding to the nearest dollar. If you want to, you can round to the nearest cent if that's something, if you want to be that specific. But that'll allow you to basically increase the price of all those items by 10%. It's going to, make sure, or it's going to give you that warning. And then boom, it shows you, and all those have the new price. A lot of these were set at 0, so not the best example, but you guys get the idea. Pretty cool, especially if you guys, have to do annual adjustments or things like that based on inflation, supply, demand, and so on and so forth. So the next couple of things, we redesigned the UI in a couple of areas and also added some features and functionality to that. So we were talking earlier about the company info tied to the logo. And again, that's where this is, the logo, right, in our name. We redesigned this page. So it used to just be kind of like 2 blocks of text here and just a bunch of options kind of bunched in. So we basically separated things out. The company details, the top section is largely unchanged. But down here, we basically grouped these things a little bit better, gave some headers, so spaced some things out, made it a little bit easier to understand what these things are, added tooltips. So if you're unfamiliar with what some of these things do, there's tooltips tied to that. But we also added some functionality. So one of those things is the default order type when you create new orders. And so when I say create new orders, I mean where an option to select which type isn't available. So like if I go to the quick add, I make an order, you're choosing what type you're making right there, right? But if you click the order or the plus order button on maybe the order list or the home page or something like that, it just auto creates an order, right? And if you do that, you can select, hey, do I want this to default to a work order? Or I want this to default to an estimate? It really depends on your workflow. So you can set that here. You can also set your default billing terms. As probably a lot of you know, especially on the commercial side, it used to just default to due upon receipt for every new account created. Well, now you can come in and have control over that. For your residential accounts, what's my default billing term? What for commercial accounts? Maybe it's net 30 or something like that. So you can set that up. So new functionality and redesigned screen. We also just brought the schedule settings over here. Now, for many of you, this likely isn't something you need to worry about. You probably already have your schedule settings turned on. This is really to help with onboarding new users, making sure they were aware that they could set their schedule settings and what this entails, right? And maybe some of you guys aren't aware of some of these schedule settings. You just never actually kind of dove into this. And so this makes it, again, easier to find. Again, this is on your schedule normally, which I'll show here when we get to another feature. But we just made it easier to access that from a different page. So a couple of nifty things there. We also made a big overhaul to our recurring appointments, a feature maybe a lot of you guys aren't even familiar with. It really kind of depends on how much recurring work you might do. But if you're making a recurring appointment, we basically redesigned this. Again, we gave it some breathing room. We spaced some things out a little better. We made this much cleaner in terms of the width of the page. And again, just gave it headers, so it's more understandable what you're setting. So it's like here, I'm just going to say, this is recurring work for Bob. And then, I'm going to choose how often I want these, or how soon I want these to show up on my schedule. So I want to show up, 3 months in advance, 6 months in advance, 12 months in advance, etc. You have to select an account, which you can see here. I won't go through all of this. You guys can look at our help site if you guys have more questions on what this looks like. But again, we cleaned up the whole page, and we also added some new features here. So the first and foremost is you can now select what type the appointment is when it gets created. So if you guys have custom appointment types where you want something besides the default of work, you have that option now. You also have more options on the order itself. So you can set what print style I want for this, what lead source should exist for this when those new orders are created, what group or subgroup should exist for those, and who's the sales rep who basically created this recurring work and should auto be applied to that. So the rest of this was already there. Again, we just cleaned up the UI, but additional functionality that's been requested for a while, and just want to get that out for you guys. So the next big thing, which honestly I think is probably going to be the most exciting for some of you, it's tied to our schedule. Made a couple of changes here on the schedule. By the way, if you guys didn't know, if you just hover your mouse and hold shift and scroll up and down, you can do the horizontal scroll. I've noticed when I do screen share with people that a lot of people don't necessarily know that, and it's actually pretty common on a lot of websites. So just a heads up for kind of an advanced tool there. But we added a change to the conflicts, basically gave you guys an option for how you want those displayed. So for example, the default you guys are used to right now is if there's a couple of conflicts on the schedule, it'll show up with this red outline, and it'll basically give you this pop-up window to sort of see what they are and to kind of go through and fix your conflict if you need to, or if it's, an intentional overlap on your guys' side.
Used to it in this default in SM6.
Right, but we don't need to talk about the legacy.
No, but we're about to take away the people's toys why they still use 5.
Right. No, I just, I was going to get to that. So hold on. You're getting ahead of the game here, Joe. Get ahead of the game.
Sorry, yeah.
We added this stack conflicts toggle up at the top. So if you turn this off to unstack the conflicts, they go side by side and they shrink. And they will auto-fill. So if I add a third conflict into here, they will continue shrinking as needed. Again, if you move this around, so it's back to 2, it just auto-grows, right? It's really slick how this works. You'll also notice that once it gets to a certain width, the details, even if I have these turned on, right, I can turn this on or off, the details will eventually turn off automatically. There's just not enough room to display them, so you have to use the hover pop-up. But this is indeed something that has kept people in the legacy software. It's one of the biggest things I've heard for must-have, can't leave because of this. It's one of the reasons why we added this feature. And we initially looked at doing this back in the 6.5 release. It was just more work than we wanted to do at the time. We just found a better way to do the process. We're able to get this out in a couple of days' work rather than a couple of weeks. So we're excited for the feature. Again, you can toggle it on or off. It's like this by default. So everyone kind of who wants to keep the old style can do so, but it also gives you that side-by-side view if you so desire. We also added another change where, I'll drag this over here, where if you have an activity or a recurring appointment on the schedule, in order to differentiate these a little bit better, these still have the solid background color. So we had quite a few users kind of talk about, and again, this is something that the old schedule used to have. This was something that they wanted to help differentiate a little bit more, because if you guys have, let's say 5, 6, 7 routes, and you guys have mostly appointments on those routes, the only difference that it used to have was the color up at the top. So this little kind of top bar to kind of indicate it was an activity versus a job reminder versus an actual appointment. So there was a little bit of language here. As you can see, it shows activity, right? But to help differentiate those, we basically made this so that activities and those automated recurring appointments will show up with the solid color on the background. So both of those are there. And as promised before, if you guys are not aware, there are tons of settings tied to your schedule up here at the top. If you haven't got into there and looked at some of these, highly recommend it, including maybe arrival windows if you aren't aware of that feature, which came out last month. So lots of cool stuff going on the schedule. There's more stuff coming too. The last two things are really, really quick. So I'll go through those and then we can move on. One of which is on the order screen. This in progress dashboard, we added a quick view for declined orders. So if you're using the approval tool and an order has been declined, this is only going to look at the last 30 days, but this gives you something to really at a glance just know, hey, I had a declined order. Can I go in? Can I save it? What was the reason for the decline? Is it just a price issue? Is there some other reason that maybe I can salvage and so forth? So you can go through that and then move on. This is also just a view in your order list. It's just added to the order approval section, just a subsection of the declined orders. So that's one thing. And I should have showed this earlier, but I had it at the bottom of my list, so that's my fault. But back on the products and services, we added another view to help, and that is regarding your favorite services. Don't know how this slipped through when we initially built this, but it's just a quick view if you have any services that are favorited or your products as well. If you have any of those favorited, and to do so, by the way, you just enter one of these and have this mark add to favorites. That basically allows you to more easily add these on the mobile app, more easily add these when you're on the order screen here in ServiceMonster, and just having an easier view now in the product and service list. So pretty slick. There's tons more stuff that went on. There were some smaller features. There were some bug fixes. There was a bunch of behind the scenes stuff that we did. It was a pretty large release overall. That's the stuff I have time to show. I don't want to go any deeper than that. So excited to get these things out for you guys. Let us know feedback wise how things are going. With that, what's kind of coming up? 6/6/12, we've got some more schedule improvements. We've got a copy function that we're adding in. So that's actually done. We're going to get that into testing next week. But basically, any appointment you have, if you want to straight up copy it to another route, you can do so. You can also copy activities. So if you have an activity, a task, or something that needs to be on 2 separate routes, you can do that in a single click, basically, instead of having to create a whole new activity or a whole new appointment. So excited for that.
Oh yeah, it's coming. It's coming. Do you have a Control C and Control V?
We don't. It's on the right click menu.
Okay.
So if you guys weren't aware, there are menus here. And if I right click the appointment, I have a context menu here. If I right click any empty cell, I can also do a new appointment or a new activity here. I can do the same thing up here on the route header. This is actually a big one. I can show the route on Google Maps. And that'll allow me.
Yes, you have right clicks on. You should pay attention to your right clicks. It's very powerful stuff.
Exactly.
That's cool.
And we're improving some of the sidebar functionality over here to make this easier understood that, hey, this is clickable, for example, to open up your activity or your appointment. We're adding some quick actions over here. We're cleaning up some quick actions on the appointments, just some cool stuff. So the focus is really on the schedule, making improvements there. We're also making improvements to the SMS activities, making sure that you guys can access those after the fact and that they're a different view to more easily identify them between kind of like the email activities you guys see when you send an email. Similar thing there. And this is all going to come out mid-April. And then the month view is still being worked on as well, which our goal is late April there. So that got pushed back a couple of weeks just because Aaron our dev got bogged down in a couple of things, but the month view is still being heavily worked on. And that's our goal is to get it up before the end of the month. So big stuff coming on the schedule. Now, with that said, let me stop the screen share here and get back to our smiling faces. We have some other exciting news we've kind of talked about in the last Ask Live event, but one of those is Responsibid. And so Kurt and their team have been busy over the holidays and the first couple of months of this year working on expanding the integration between Responsibid and ServiceMonster that has more functionality. It's essentially the tightest integration that exists between any of their CRMs that they integrate with.
On their new release, right?
Yeah. And that came out about 6 weeks ago. And we've kind of been using that time to really kind of work with the existing users, make sure that everything is kind of as people expect and so on and so forth. And that process has mostly gone well. There are a couple of things that they got improved, and that's exactly why we wanted to have this kind of period of warming up. And now it's time to kind of start breaking this news a little bit louder. And one of the things
so
that we're
give the 10,000 foot view on Responsibid real quick for those who don't know.
So if you don't know what Responsibid is, it is a sales tool first and foremost. It's about, gathering your sales pipeline and really being an online sales tool, or to aid your in-person sales process, to essentially add all kinds of pricing information, auto updates price based on the various things that you've input. It allows you to bundle things together. It has good, better, best pricing options, a bunch of things like that. And the integration now with ServiceMonster allows you to basically first off, they have direct access to our schedule now. No more Google Calendar as a middleman. That's huge. You can control which routes they have access to. That again coordinates with their CrewCal, their schedule tool, which is really, really slick. And you can also have control over what Responsibid does with their information and when. So you can essentially say, hey, up to this point, keep updating the estimate that exists on ServiceMonster. And at this point, change it to a work order and essentially disconnect. So that work order exists as it is in ServiceMonster. No more updates coming through from Responsibid. If another request comes in, it's going to be an entirely different estimate. So, and you can customize the complete follow-up sequence. So you can say, hey, at this sequence, do this. At that sequence, do that. You have full control over Responsibid, updating information on ServiceMonster. So
good stuff. Yeah. And we are going to be meeting with them on do they have a podcast? Is that what it is?
Yeah, they have kind of weekly Friday just live events, kind of like this, but they usually have specific kind of topics and guests and things like that. And so we're going to be on with Kurt on Friday the 21st. 21st. Yep.
So sounds right.
So if you guys are interested at all, if you are Responsibid users who want to be there, definitely kind of take a gander over there. We're going to be excited to go over that. Now, to give me a break, I can grab some water here off screen. We've been doing these feature focuses. We're excited to get Elena on here. She's going to go through some things tied to QuickBooks. You want to kind of take over here, Elena?
Yeah, definitely. So we're going to talk about QuickBooks. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. So with ServiceMonster, you can both import your QuickBooks data and export your invoices and payments back over. So the very first thing you want to do is get set up with your connection with QuickBooks. So to do this, we're going to start in the marketplace. So that's where I'm at right now from the main menu. And then you're going to go up, you're going to look for QuickBooks, go ahead and select QuickBooks. And then once you're in here, we're going to go to the configuration tab. So this is the configuration page. So you're going to want to set everything up in here. And then once you click save, you're going to be ready to move on to the integration. So to get started with the integration, we're going to go ahead and, I wanted to say something else. So when you're first getting started with QuickBooks with ServiceMonster, you're going to want to import everything over. Well, I already said that. Okay, let's just get started. So we're going to go on down to the settings, and we're going to click on import data. Okay, so here you have a few different choices. Obviously, we're going to go ahead and select QuickBooks Online. Okay, from this page, you'll be able to transfer your client list, your price list, your invoice history, your payment history, and your employees and your tax setup. So it's going to import everything over that you're going to need. And once that's complete, ServiceMonster can communicate back and forth with QuickBooks. So to export, once this is done, you're going to go ahead and navigate over to your orders on the left side and go on over to accounting. Once you're in your accounting, you want to open up the export wizard. And this is where you're going to follow the instructions for your export. And once that's done, you can go ahead and click next, or you can just exit out. So we did also want to say that one of the most common error messages that we get is when it says this customer has been rejected by QuickBooks. So basically, this means that either there's important information missing in ServiceMonster's details tab for the client, and especially that might happen with like new clients, or the information in the details tab doesn't match what already exists in QuickBooks if it's a previous customer. So please do keep that in mind. And we also wanted to remind you guys that you can go ahead and take a look at our help site, because we do have an article there that you can take a look at called Errors for QuickBooks. And it has a full list of different errors that you can click through and take a look at. And hopefully that could be even more helpful if you are having an error message.
It's important to note too that where this error message is actually going to show up. So you want to click on the non-posted invoices or non-posted payments. Anytime you run the export itself, anything that doesn't get pulled over is going to show up in these lists. Now, Elena doesn't have an actual connection here in her test account. That's why she has the IIF file, which is really old school. What's that stand for, Joe? It's like Intuit something file. Anyways,
yeah,
it's
the Intuit exchange file. Yeah. Intuit exchange file. I don't know.
So it's really, really old school way that they could port data in and out of QuickBooks. We have that option technically. Very rare any of you would ever use that. QuickBooks Online is really what QuickBooks itself has pushed almost everyone to. We also do connect with desktop. So any of you guys who are still using the desktop process, we also have a tool that does that. But in here, if there is an error, it'll show in that export message. You see that section over there. So if there is an error itself in that column on the right where it shows export message, that's where the error would show. You can look at our help site to see if it's a common error, because again, that article up top, you just want to click on that article really quick, Elena. This article on our help site, the article you have up in the tabs.
Oh yeah.
This article has the most common errors that we see, but if it's not in here, you can also just do a Google search with QuickBooks error, whatever the number is, and it will show you that information of what's going on. So QuickBooks is really finicky. They have really specific things. They also use the account name as their account ID. So
yeah,
can be problematic.
Christmas. I've been bitching about that since 1998. As an engineer, that's just horrific, and they still do it, and it's just ridiculous. Anyway, get off my soapbox. I will say though, and I'm sure they give that error to you online, but I'm sure they didn't re-architect those same mistakes in their tenant database. To that end, just to be the bearer of bad news, just to poke the bear a little bit, QuickBooks will be discontinuing its desktop. Intel we have is May 30th to 2023. Is that right, Adam?
So it's for different versions. So the 2020 version is essentially they're deprecating
3
service.
years.
It's 3 years. Yep. So the 2020 version is basically being deprecated next month, and then it'll go on from there. They haven't said anything officially, but that's sort of their rolling standard. Like we said, they're trying to force everyone into the online environment. My understanding is that there's still some features that the online environment does not have. So hopefully they are fixing that. I'm sure the desktop tools will still work for at least a time. They're just going to stop support of them.
And they're not building them anymore.
Which could mean that certain things might start breaking.
And they won't care, especially if it's small amount, like a couple 100,000 customers are affected. They don't care.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you haven't gone QuickBooks Online, if you're still using desktop, depending on the version that you have, you might want to start seriously thinking about making that part of your to-do list. All right, I'll hand it back over to you. Sorry. I just wanted to pop in there and give that bad news.
No, absolutely. Thanks, Elena. It's really just kind of understanding that, like you said, we can also import from QuickBooks Desktop, by the way. Again, we're seeing that less and less, but there is a process. It's much more involved. There's help articles that go over all of that. It's in our marketplace. You can go directly to those articles for both desktop and online. So lots of tools there to help you. And of course, our support team will help when needed. And yes, Alan asked if we can share the link to join Responsibid. We will absolutely share that with the SMUG group and anyone else who wants to know. So with that said, let's go over some SMUG posts. There were some good ones this month. So the first one came from David, and this is actually the second one that came in just last month. Hey guys, any plans for a ServiceMonster integration with Company Cam? This has been getting more and more traction. This is our most heavily requested integration that comes directly from the marketplace. If you guys aren't familiar, on our marketplace, we have a section down at the bottom that says, hey, is there something you would like us to integrate with? And we use that to kind of weight demand for certain things. Company Cam has been getting more and more demand lately. We've had a couple people directly in SMUG ask about it. We've gotten additional phone calls about it. The only thing I can say personally right now is I've had conversations with someone on Company Cam's team. And in late May, early June, we have another meeting that's planned. So that's all I can say right now. Just that, wheels are turning. We're looking into it, I guess, is what that entails. Nothing specific yet. We just know that the demand is increasing, and we want to make sure that, we take a good hard look at that. So,
and was it Pete? I think it was Pete that posted you can do it with Zapier. I wouldn't think it would be as tight as if we built it out, but still doable. So there's an option is there as well.
Right. If you're using Company Cam, you just want to get the projects over. You can absolutely use Zapier. It just won't have the super tight sync back and forth and all the other cool tools. So, but yes, which comes into play a little bit later here when we go over Zapier. Talking about QuickBooks, Cole asked a question. Hey, what does it mean to check a payment as posted when recording a payment? And this exists on all of our invoices and all of our payments. There is a posted checkbox. And so what that refers to is QuickBooks. It refers to, hey, QuickBooks knows about this. Essentially, it's been posted over to QuickBooks. And so if you had that integration turned on, you were using QuickBooks, that gets turned on automatically. When you do the export process that Elena was showing. So if you export an invoice or a payment over, it automatically marks that. You can also manually turn that on if you maybe had to go record a payment or record an invoice over there manually, or someone on your team did, you can do that. So you don't have duplicates. So that's really all that means. But figured since we're going over QuickBooks anyways, good time to bring that up. Ryan asked, hey, I love how ServiceMonster keeps a log when we have emailed the customer. It would also be helpful to have a log entry for invoices being printed as well. We're working on the accounts receivable. It would be nice to know when and how many invoices have been printed and presumably sent. So I wanted to show this for a couple of things. One is there were a couple of good ideas that came from the community, kind of going over that. And I always like to kind of showcase that. I also wanted to show that there are certain things you guys can look at in the company history to kind of help with this. So it really kind of depends on how you're doing your billing and so on and so forth. So let me just do a really, really quick screen share here. The first thing is that was recommended that they actually type notes of when the invoice itself gets sent. They say invoice mailed, invoice hand delivered, etc. This is actually a really easy thing to do if you're on an order and you're just looking at, I'll just go into a work order here. You want to go into this and you just want to add an action that you did. This is really what activities do. When you email something, for example, it's an activity that gets tied to this, right? It's the same idea. So you can make a manual activity if you ever wanted to. It says, hey, mailed invoice, and save that. This gets saved, that happened on the 7th, and you can view this directly on the account and so forth. And so you can do things like this. Some of this stuff gets automatically tracked against the account as well, in case you guys weren't aware. So if I go to the account there's a profile field. And on this, you can see the last time that they were emailed, last time that they were mailed. So certain things, again, these are marketing as well. So it's not 100% perfect. But the other thing is tied to your history. You can look at billing statements. So if you guys are doing billing statements, when you're doing your billing, this is also another way you could potentially do this. You can see exactly when you ran that billing statement and sent it out. So those are kind of some things that currently exist. But again, the main tip there is that if you really want to have that specific, we handed the person the invoice on this date, and it's maybe a different thing than when the invoice happened. You want to have that, you can do so with the activities. Yeah, I hope that's helpful. The last bit here is tied to Zapier. So we mentioned up at the top, there was a lot of talk about Zapier. We've even mentioned Zapier again, talking about Company Cam. There were posts by Pete, Jordan, Mike, and Carrie all about Zapier. I've had conversations with most of them in our developer inbox as well, kind of going through some things. So I figured it'd be kind of a good idea to go through a couple of things that come up, because Zapier, while simpler than actually doing the web development yourself, can be still complex. You have to go through the sort of step-by-step process. You have to kind of know what you're trying to build, triggers and actions and so forth. So there is still a complication to it. So let's go over first and foremost, how do we connect to Zapier? Well, we made it easy for you guys. Zapier is in the marketplace. You can come here, you can click this link to connect. We are still in beta, so it's not something you can just publicly search for until you sign up through this link. Once you do so, you're going to want to read our help article that explains how to create an API user and use those credentials to be the API authentication, essentially, for the account. And then once you're up and running, you can go over, and Zapier, when you create Zaps, is what they call the events. It'll look something like this, right? This is just a random one this is one that I used to play with a lot, so I haven't actually updated the name of this, but I'm going to show kind of a standard trigger event that happens and kind of go through some other examples of how you could use this. So first and foremost, when you come into here, when you actually want to sign up for ServiceMonster, you'll actually search for us. It'll pick it up once you have the full name. And some of these are older versions. This is because we're in beta. And so the latest version is going to be here. There's a couple of minor changes to this. Oh my gosh, I have to log back in. Hold on just a sec. Classic. All right. Let's get that back up and running. Anyways, you will need to select it in the list, and that's how you search for us, right? Once you have that, you choose what event is triggering something happening in Zapier, what's triggering the information being moved around. So we have a few triggers: account created, account deleted, account updated. That means anytime the account record is saved. Same thing for payment: created, deleted, updated. Same thing for appointment: created, deleted, updated. Same thing for the lead. Same thing for the order. There's a very specific trigger on orders when it comes to being invoiced, right? And then same thing with the site: created, deleted, updated. So I'm going to do a pretty standard one, which means order was created inside ServiceMonster. I'm going to hit continue. Now, this is where a few hurdles are going to come up that we're aware of, and this is something that when we get out of beta is going to be fixed. We want this process to be a lot smoother for you guys. When you hit continue for the first time, it forces you to, I've already done this, so it forces you to run the test. And if you do the test trigger, all that it pulls up is the original data until you've actually ran the item through. Now, of course, I pushed an order through on this test account, so I can't even show you guys the exact example. But basically, it's going to say potentially, hey, the test failed, and it'll show some really generic hard-coded data that was entered. In my example, I pushed an order through, so it actually does show this. But all you have to do is say skip test if that's the case, and I'll show you guys how you can test after the fact. The next thing I want to show is kind of a more of an advanced step that's going to help you guys in a lot of ways. So the way that data is stored, when you have an order record, you don't necessarily have all the details for the account. The account stuff is stored in an accounts table. orders stuff is stored in an orders table. And so you don't necessarily have all of the information you might need on that initial event. When you're setting this up, one of the things you can do is this secondary action that's called get account by ID. You can also do the same thing for doing a search, account profile, a few other things, but account by ID is going to be the most commonly used one that I've seen. If you do that, hit continue. Again, you sign up for ServiceMonster. All you have to do is basically grab this account ID here. So again, when you're mapping the fields, it's what they call this. When you're mapping the fields, I'm just going to search for account ID, and you're just going to grab that. So that tells it that, hey, this is the field in ServiceMonster that is the account ID that I should be grabbing. Again, I hit continue. Same thing is going to happen. You have to test the action. And this is where this hurdle step comes up and says, hey, failed to find an account. You can just skip the test. Now, this is out of beta. We're going to have this working. This is going to be easier for you guys, but this is where I can show you how you can kind of move forward and test this without pulling your hair out and wanting to say mean things to me. You can do a quick action, either a Google Sheets thing or an email. You can just send an email to yourself. It's really easy to do so. I'm going to just show the Google Sheets example. I'm just going to create a spreadsheet row. Hit continue, hit continue. I'm just going to have a bunch of fields set up that I can basically update and choose what these are. And you can map these. So I'm going to say, hey, I know that it's this Zapier test spreadsheet because that's the one that I created. And it's going to be the testing worksheet. So I'm going to just say, hey, on the account, I need to search for available fields. And you can see here, I have two different sections. Everything above this, I can search fields for. So I can search in the order, or I can search for the account ID. I think it's easiest to just look for, start typing the name. You can see, hey, here's the account name. Email address, same thing. Look for the email. Boom, there's the email. Damien had asked about the do not call, do not mail, etc. You can see those right here. Do not mail, do not email. Again, you have to have the account ID for some of these things in order to grab that information. That's basically how it kind of works. Same thing for phone. Or whoops. I want to grab phone 1 here. And maybe I want to grab the label for it as well. I can do so. So anyways, the main thing I'm trying to show is that once you have this set up, you have the data that you want mapped, hit continue. You can absolutely retest this. It's going to potentially fail. It's sent, in this case, it was able to send some basic data with our test data in here. And then what you can do is you can turn this on and run the event through ServiceMonster. What that'll do is it will either send an email or create this Google Sheet for you, have that run a couple of times with data, and you can basically test it that way. And if anything is off or you forgot a field, you can come back and you can add it. Then once you're ready to go, you can swap out this last action to whatever the action you're trying to do, which could be, something in Company Cam, or maybe you're dealing with something, you're pulling data from one thing to another, maybe an analytics tool that you have or something like that. So I hope this was useful. Like I said, this is kind of higher level stuff when you talk about the get account by ID, but that's how you're going to oftentimes get access to those additional fields. Because I don't know if you guys noticed, but the account by ID section has all of the account stuff. So you can see the phone, the email.
Our integration is so extensive.
It gets pretty beefy if you just kind of look through it. There's a lot of stuff here. So again, I hope that's helpful. If you guys are interested in Zapier, give it a whirl. Like I said, give this a try kind of as your test environment, using, again, just like a really generic Google Sheets or email action. And let me know if that gets working for you. You can always email us if you have issues. Whew, lots of stuff.
Tons of stuff.
We had a couple of questions come in. Oh my goodness.
No, just one long one.
One long one.
Good to see you, Damien. It's been a while. Miss you, man. He's trying to get from looks like mobile 2 to our current app, and he's got some friction. based off some description fields not showing up, surfacing early enough in the process. So I don't know if we have a solution for him with the new release we've been working on diligently for like 6 months. It's a pretty big release. We might even go with the ServiceMonster app 2.0 for that one. Adam and I are fighting with that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to. Can you reach out if you haven't already to support?
Or just send us a DM.
Yeah,
and want to explain it with some screenshots and circling what you're looking for.
Yeah, if we can get just a little bit more specific information, we might be able to find something to help you. And if not, we can definitely get certain things marked as a feature request or so forth if needed. So,
or even a screen capture in mobile too, and say, "I want this here. Look,
exactly.
Yeah, this is what you're missing."
Yeah, I think that'd be the best way to do it. Like I said, there's a lot there potentially, and I'd want us to kind of sit down and go through those steps. So, please do so. If I don't see anything come in, I will have Brenda or someone reach out to you too, just to make sure that we get you taken care of. So, that's all I got, Joe.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah. Oh, that's it.
That's it. Man. Yeah. And we, scratch the surface. If you want to go see every little nook and cranny, they did a pretty good job posting those release notes. So you can find those in your What's New.
Yep.
Yeah. And paying attention to, is that it? Do we have anybody else who wants to jump on or should I be wrapping this up?
Yeah. I haven't seen any other questions come in, I don't think. So,
yeah. So pay attention to the announcements for the Responsibid meeting that we're going to sit in with Kurt. And we'll keep those releases coming.
Yeah.
Keep the questions coming. Thank you so much for your attention, and we will see you next time.